2 F-18s before flying the F-35, and he's been flying he's one of the plank owners, so one of the first guys to fly the F-35, and he's been doing that for how many years now?
13, 14?
13 years, the F-35, which is pretty impressive. And you got to hear he likes to do dirt bikes. He's an avid outdoorsman. He's from back east. I mean, he's from North Carolina, right? South Carolina. And so, some of you, Tennessee, right? Some of you guys back east, he speaks your language very well. And he recently just turned over command of VMFA-122, which has a plethora of names throughout history. They were the Crusaders, they were the Werewolves, and they currently hold the title of Leathernecks. Is that right? Yep. Call sign Nickel, if you ever hear him on the radio. And he's going to tell you more about that, but he's done a lot of things for the first time ever. And one of the things he's done for the first time ever is took 10 F-35s to the ship for an entire deployment, which is pretty neat. And so I've asked him to share. I've gotten to hang out with Stroke in work environment, but also going out on the range. He loves to go camping out on the range, loves to go shooting, things like that. And so I just really asked him to share a little bit of his story and his path. And I think it's something that we can all learn from. And I would ask that you give it your attention. He told me that he was going to make his story shorter, but I said, no, Stroke, don't make it shorter because it's that good of a story. All right? So especially you young guys, I know it's hard, but I need you to really, well, I'm looking behind you, Kaika. I need you to really pay attention to what he's going to say, all right? And I think we can all learn from that. So Stroke, if you could.
All right, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right, well, thanks for having me, Jim. Thanks for asking me to speak. So when Jim asked me to speak, his first question is like, man, what am I going to talk about? What do I have to say that y'all really want to hear? And so thinking through that, my message really today is really to the young men in the group, all right, from guard and up, all right? So I'm going to really speak on the lessons I learned when I was in command. And really, I didn't fully realize a lot of these lessons I'm going to share with you until I got to the end of my command tour. And that, as the Marine Corps goes, generally is how it goes. By the time you get to the end of your tour, is about the time you've figured it out, and then we get moved on. So the Marine Corps is pretty good at developing leaders, and then moving those leaders as they develop on to future roles and responsibilities within the Marine Corps, and then eventually on to civilian life. So you heard a little bit about my story. I'm gonna, for the young man, how many of y'all have read Proverbs? Who's read it? Okay, but who's really studied it? All right, how many chapters are in Proverbs? 31. That's awesome. All right, it's about one a day. So if you take it, I'd recommend, if you're looking for a place to start, because all of you young men at some point are going to be in a leadership position somewhere. And right now, you're in training. All right, your life experience from now till you get to wherever you're going. So we'll use my example. Until I turned 42 years old and took command of a fighter squadron, everything to that point in my life had a reason and had a place, and God had developed me and put me in situations that I did not really realize why I had been put there, in order to develop the leadership skills and traits and principles and things that I needed in order to lead the men and women ultimately on a deployment over to duke it out with the Chinese and the Russians this past year. And I'll talk to that in a second. All right. So you're in development right now, but if you're looking for a place to start, the thing that I fully realized when I got into command is I had the foundation, because when I was your age, I got in the Word, I studied, I committed those scriptures to memory, I made it a part of my life, and then it ultimately paid off when I took command. And I will tell you, if you're looking for a book on leadership, you start with Proverbs. And when you're done with that and you've truly studied that, and you know how many chapters that is, I'd recommend you do a chapter a day, every day of the month, forever. It's a great read. Then I'd recommend you move on to the other leadership books and things and lectures, and you'll find out there in the world. But I have found personally in my career in the Marine Corps that almost there's 1,000,001 lectures and books on leadership. Almost all of them come back to some biblical truth that you're going to find in Proverbs. Solomon's sitting there writing practical sense, common sense stuff, okay? So really today, I'm going to focus kind of, and keep me on timeline if you don't mind, Jim, if I'm going long, but I'm going to focus on the problems and the struggles that I had and how I applied biblical truths. Yeah. Okay. From Proverbs, all right, to my command tour. So I'm going to kind of start at the end. So how my command tour ended. So by the 27th month of command, which is a long time to be in charge of an organization, I had 300 Marines. At times I had up to 17 airplanes. We were coming off deployment, so we had a successful deployment. It was hard. We spent 7 months on ship, flying from ship at sea in the South China Sea. We got up into the Yellow Sea, up near Korea, North Korea, South Korea, Japan. We went left to left with CV-16, which is one of China's aircraft carriers. And I had days where I was launching my young pilots and just praying to God I had trained them well. We were merging with intercepting and escorting Chinese J-15 fighter pilots, guys just like us, showing up to the merge, joining with those guys. They've got weapons. We're kind of in their backyard. So it was a pretty tense deployment. But that was kind of the culminating point, and that was last June. Came home pretty successful, but that's not how it started out. So I took command in April of 21, and there I sat in command. I felt overwhelmed, unprepared, felt like maybe, man, the Marine Corps has probably really made a mistake. I don't know that I deserve to be here based on the caliber of individuals that generally take command, and kind of B, I don't know that I really know what I'm doing. Like, we've got a lot of stuff on the plate and I don't have answers. Case in point, you take command, there's a big ceremony, it's all good for the first day. And then within 4 weeks, anybody want to guess what happened within the first 4 weeks of my command tour?
You don't want to be the commander?
What's that?
You don't want to be the commander?
Yes, but why?
Because it's so stressful.
It is very stressful, but I had, within 4 weeks, I had my first Marine die. So, which is not part of the job description. Take command, I'm going to fly F-35s, I'm going to take them overseas, and we're going to deploy. And I get a phone call one night from my boss at 3 a.m. and it said, hey, one of your Marines has passed away on a motorcycle accident on base. He's dead. Good luck. All right? And that's at 3 in the morning. He hung up, and then it's like, what now? All eyes are on me. Hey, what are we going to do? So within 4 weeks, I'm dealing with the death of one of my Marines. Within 8 weeks,
Suicide?
not suicide, that'll come later. Within 8 weeks, my maintenance department, which is the bulk of the unit, which prepares our airplanes to go aviate, we failed our maintenance inspection and shut the squadron down, and we had to stop flying. That's within 8 weeks, showing up. And I've got guys like, hey, you can't fly airplanes right now. Your maintenance department doesn't know what they're doing. We've got to fix some things. Things are not right. Things are not safe. So I'm shut down, trying to figure out what's going on. And then within 12 weeks, one of some of the tasking I had been given was, despite the fact that I was going to redeploy in 18 months after taking command, I was instructed to cut from my squadron about half the unit and send it down the street to form the next F-35 squadron in Yuma, which would become VMFA-122 and they're getting ready to get out the door here in a couple weeks to go deploy. All right, so I lost half the squadron, half the airplanes, all my experience. We had more maintenance days than fly days, meaning we worked on airplanes more than we were flying airplanes. I had a really green crew. All my pilots were new. I had very little experience, and there I sat in command, in charge, and all eyes on me, looking for guidance, looking for vision, looking for, hey, sir, how are we going to do this? How are we going to get this crew ready to go despite the challenges, okay? So kind of get back to how I started, to say I was feeling overwhelmed, unprepared. Hey, I don't really deserve to be here. Hey, I don't know what I'm going to do. I had to take a pause, and I did. And I kind of reached back into Proverbs, and I'm going to kind of go through some of the struggles that I had and where I found solutions that were kind of sitting there all the while. But before we do that, I want to tie this back into some biblical truths. Let's go back into, who's read Genesis? Okay, who's read the story of creation? Okay, so one of the great things great day to be out here in God's creation, but anybody give me an example of a character in the Bible, first couple chapters, of maybe a guy that perhaps felt overwhelmed, underprepared, maybe not ready? Who? Adam. And why do you think he felt that way?
Before or after?
Okay. After. Why?
Because he was going to die.
Okay, there's that. What else?
Because he had to work his fields by himself.
Absolutely. What?
He disobeyed
He disobeyed God. So Genesis doesn't really give us, if you really read through the first couple chapters, you know, by chapter 3, Adam's responsible for the fall of mankind, so to speak. And then we get into chapter 4, and then he's kind of not in there anymore. It's we move on with the rest of the story there. So there's not a lot of, we don't have a lot of information about Adam, but if you read between the lines, and you can relate to this guy that probably is feeling like he's got a mission. What was Adam's mission? God gave it to him while he was in the garden. What did God say go do? Okay, sort of, yeah. What else? What?
Create, populate the earth.
Populate the earth, subdue the earth. Basically means get out in the world, figure it out. I need you to procreate. I need you to make more people and tend to my creation. Educate your family, lead your family, right? That's probably an implied task that God had given him. And pass on the lessons learned in the relationship that you have with me so that your offspring has that same relationship. And because he was successful at that, right, we're here today talking about something that happened thousands of years ago. All right, and we have that relationship with God. But in the moment, if you're Adam, so Adam sins, right? We all remember that?
Mm-hmm.
How?
by eating the fruit.
Yeah, that's right. He and Eve did. So he's ultimately responsible for that. And what does God do?
Punishes him.
Okay.
and takes it out.
But here's what I want you to think about. So if you really read in Genesis, it says God cursed the ground and he drove him out of the garden. And I think sometimes we maybe gloss over some of that. But God was angry. He cursed the ground. What do you guys think of when we think of cursing? Yeah, anger, right? All right, it's not a pleasant experience. It's kind of like Dad walking in and we've done something wrong and Dad's angry. Anybody seen that side of your dad? Yeah.
3 times a day.
Okay.
Every day.
Yeah. But I want you to think about that. So there's Adam, and when I think of God driving him out of the ground, I think of it, hold on, guard. I think of him grabbing guard by the back of the neck and the britches and dragging him and said, "Get out." That's basically what happened. So Adam's probably not having a pretty good time here, right? So he's sinned. He's got a mission. God didn't change the mission. He still has a mission to subdue the earth, procreate, find a relationship with the Lord. But he's been kicked out of the garden, driven out. He's now on his own. He's surviving. He's got to figure out how to do what we're doing out here with technology. He's got to figure out how to grow food, find food. He's got to educate his family. All right. And his relationship with the Lord was broken. At this point, the Lord has gone to heaven, right? Or departed him physically. God used to walk in the garden with him, right? That had ended. And then the other thing you've got going on with Adam is he's now responsible for the entirety of the fall of man. How do you think that feels? If he was here today and he could see the world, how do you think he'd probably feel? I think we'd probably put him on suicide watch. All right? Wouldn't we? We probably would. We probably would have a lot of concerns for his mental health and capacity if he knew what the outcome of that was going to be. All right? And then he's responsible for the Lord killing his creation. So Adam's sitting there unclothed, right? Fig leaves, hiding from the Lord. And what does the Lord clothe him with?
Leaves.
Nope, not leaves. Animal skin. Where did he get animal skin? He killed it. It's not said, it's implied, right? So you've got the Lord sacrificing his creation, shedding blood, the first blood shed, in order to cover the sin of man, cover Adam's discretions here, right? So how much do you think that might have hurt the Lord to have to kill his creation in order to save man?
I was thinking, like, if God, like, cursed the ground, why would everybody go in heaven? Because if he cursed the ground, then that's the sin.
Well, we can talk about that later. Maybe talk about that with your dad. I don't necessarily believe that's a sin. That's clearly not a sin because God executed that. But anger is not in itself a sin. It's what you do with that anger. And we'll find many times when you read through Scripture, even though Jesus himself walking through the temple was angry with what he saw, and he acted accordingly, right? So this is a similar situation, guard, in that the Lord is angry with what has happened, but he's not sinning in that anger, okay? So there's Adam, right? So what I'm really trying to relate to you is, what's the end result with Adam? Does he give up? Where does he put his trust? Where does he ultimately put his trust and faith? In God, right? So he has to learn how to live. He's got to dig deep, and he learns how to live, and he presses on. And we know he procreated, because we're here, right? All right. So, but he had a lot of challenges. You know, one thing I didn't mention, he lost his first two sons. He loses, right? Cain kills Abel. God banishes Cain. So how do you think that would feel, Caleb, if I lost you and Lily? I would feel horrible. So here's a man that's dealing with a lot more than I had to deal with in command, right? But he puts his trust in God. And so the lesson here I'm trying to provide for you is, you're going to face a lot of challenges. We find in the first 3 books of the Bible that in between the lines, there's a lot of personal challenges with Adam. But he puts his trust in the Lord and he figures it out, all right? And he provides an example there between the lines of what it means to, in the face of adversity, I think the expectation from the Lord is you dig deep and you find some grit and you get it done, all right? Because that's ultimately what we have to do in this world. All right, so kind of back to you guys. So inevitably, you guys are all going to be leaders somewhere. So you're going to be future husbands, future fathers, maybe future civil servants or government leaders. You may be a future business leader. Is there a future squadron commander here for the Marine Corps? Anywhere, potentially? We got one. All right, talk to me later. All right, Caleb, maybe? We'll see. But, and if not that, at the end of the day, you got to lead yourself, right? So, there's a lot of lessons in Proverbs for you guys, and I'm going to share about leadership. So let's kind of talk about some of those. All right, so all right, one of the things, first things I had to do in command that I absolutely hate, anybody want to guess? It's one of the number 1 fears in America. Public speaking. All right, I know you're not afraid of public speaking. Or your brother or your other brother. Hey, I'm fearful of it. I was deathly afraid of it. It's the one thing that I wake up every morning and I still have disdain for it. And yet here I found myself in a position of command where I gave public speeches almost every day in command. And what I'll tell you, young men, is this: public speaking and being able to communicate is a skill that you need to refine. And you can only do that via practice, execution, getting up in front of any opportunity presented. You need to take it and you need to do it. I waited till my senior year of college to take public speaking, my last semester, and I almost failed it. And if I had failed it, I don't know that I would be in the Marine Corps right now, because I would have had to do summer school or do something, all right? Maybe delayed, all right? My number 1 fear, all right? But I overcame that, and it was a skill that I had to overcome via the 18 years prior to taking command the Marine Corps had given me. It's one of the best things the Marine Corps gave me. Is from the day one I stepped into the Marine Corps, I could barely stand in front of the lieutenants that I was working with. My throat would close up. Couldn't breathe. My heart would feel like it'd get up into my throat. I couldn't inhale, but I could exhale somehow. And then you would feel like you're gonna pass out, and I couldn't get any intelligent words out. And yet, from day one in the Marine Corps, I've got to stand there right at TBS and like, give a 5-paragraph order. Lead this platoon through the woods of Quantico. All right, and that was the start of it, and ultimately it ends up in taking command and having to lead other men and women. And if you can't communicate, young men, then it's a bad thing, right? You got to be able to get your message across to the folks that you're going to lead. So that's a critical component of leadership. So I would encourage you, if that is a deficiency of yours, and you may not do it now, but as you age, all right, seek out opportunities to refine that, because communication is key for leadership. All right, who can think of a human, again, Genesis, who had trouble speaking in Genesis? Moses. Awesome. Okay. So here you got, when we think of Moses, right, what are some things we think about with Moses as a leader? What comes to mind when you hear the word Moses? How would you describe him?
The tall guy with the big staff and robes.
Yeah, but what did he do, right?
Saved thousands.
Saved millions, right, of Jews, right? Led them out of the promised land. So I generally think of Moses as a guy that knew what he was doing, right? Great leader of the Israelites, confronted Pharaoh, right? Pulls them out of Egypt, crosses the Red Sea, does miracle after miracle, has to deal with all their problems, logistics, things of that nature, right? Pretty smart guy. But we didn't start out that way, right? So what happened when the Lord came to him and said, hey, I need you to go do this thing. I need you to go get my people. What did he do?
He was scared.
How many times did he say no? Yeah, he had like 4 or 5 excuses. It was excuse after excuse. And the Lord literally, from a bush that was burning but not being consumed, lays out the blueprint. He's like, all right, listen, you idiot. I need you to go. I need you to get him. I'm going to work through you. You're going to go to Pharaoh. He's going to say no. You're going to perform some miracles. He's going to say yes. You're going to take all their money and you're going to run. And then the Red Sea is going to part and it's going to be great. All right, what do you say? And I'm going to be with you the whole way. And what does he say? He ultimately says, well, I can't speak. I can't speak in front of folks. It's not my thing. All right, I'm not good at that. So this guard is another example. Do you think the Lord's happy right now? No. God was angry. He was mad. And yes.
But he sends another person with him.
Who does he send? Aaron, his brother, that could speak, right? So God had a solution, but he was fed up with Moses. He's like, listen, I got it. You can't speak. I'm going to send a man that can, and he's going to do the speaking for you. And finally, Moses commits after God makes a promise there he's going to send Aaron. All right. So public speaking is a thing. All right. So I encourage you to work on it. It was a struggle for me, but I ended up overcoming. So kind of getting on here to maybe some of the other places that I struggle more specifically. I'm going to relate this to Proverbs. So when you guys go bust out Proverbs after this and start studying, I want to pass this on to you. So one of the first things when you're in leadership, one of the most critical things is you're going to make every decision by yourself without anyone giving you any advice, and you're going to do exactly what you think is the best way to go, right? Is that a good way to go, Sniper?
Negative.
Okay. So what do you think we should do?
About others.
Yeah, include others in the decision-making process. So as a leader, you own the decision, but you better get informed about what all your options are. And here's a couple biblical truths on that from Proverbs. The first thing Proverbs is going to tell you is your inner circle. You need to have one. So you young men need to pick out an inner circle, those 3 to 5 trusted friends, family members that you can trust and that you know you can be honest with, and they need to be the folks that give you counsel, all right? But you need to be careful about who you surround yourself with. Who's ever heard a bad apple spoils the bunch? All right, what does that mean?
If you have one bad apple and you put it in a bag with other good apples, then they'll become...
Yeah, so no, not ever has a bad apple ever made a bunch of bad apples better, right? It's the opposite, right? So if you go to Proverbs, though, Proverbs 13:20 will tell you, he who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. So what is the proverb telling you there? What's the takeaway? Yeah, right? So if you want to be a champion, who do you go hang out with? Champions. If you want to be better at a sport, who do you hang out with? Folks that know what they're doing, right? So in like manner, all right, you need to surround yourself, men, as you go forward in life with your friends. You need to choose wisely, all right? And one little fact you'll find about you're going to become the average of the 3 to 5 closest relationships that you hang out with. So who you surround yourself with, who you choose to be friends with, is going to effectively become who you are. All right, so make sure you're looking at those folks that you're bringing into your life and making sure they're value added, making sure they echo those biblical truths that you hold dear to your heart, right? Proverbs 12:17 or 27:17. I know Mr. Sniper has brought this up before within Valor.